Welcome back to the Man Cave and the ManTFup podcast. I'm KimmyB.
And Lenny.
And Happy New Year, folks. First episode of 2023, which is off to a wild start. I swear, since 2020, like everybody was so excited, Len, about 2020 coming, right? Like, oh, yeah, new decade, whatever. And it's just been like every year has gone, oh, you thought 2020. Hold my beer.
Yeah.
Then, 2021. And then 2022 was like, oh, hold both my beers. And now 2023, in the first week, we've like lost people, crazy accidents. I mean, just, it's like, okay, what are we in for this year? It's just kind of like.
I think it's going to be a great year.
Listen, I feel like we've made it through so much in such a short period of time that it's kind of like, bring it on, sucker, But anyway, lots of things that we could be talking about. The NFL, the swearing in of the governor here in the great state of Florida, what's happening in Congress. But Lenny actually came across a fantastic clip from one of the biggest podcasters on the planet, Joe Rogan, who always has interesting things to say. Sometimes I agree with him. Sometimes I wholeheartedly disagree. In this situation, I think it's going to make for an interesting conversation. So do you want to go ahead and play the clip, Len?
I'm going to play the clip.
All right.
And they were a British colony for a long time.
Oh, I love
Whoa.
it. Okay, a history lesson. Did you lose it, Lenny?
I didn't lose it. It
This is what
started
happens.
in the
Lenny
middle.
doesn't know how to use his phone,
I've
guys.
said on this podcast many times, but I'll say it again, is that hard times create hard men. Hard men create soft times. Soft times create soft men. Soft men create hard times. We are now around soft men and hard times.
Yeah.
We're in the time of toxic masculinity, right? Where you could be toxically male. And then if you're suppressing masculinity, you're going to bring on hard times. It doesn't mean masculinity doesn't mean you're mean. It doesn't mean you're angry. It means strength.
Yes.
It means discipline. It means the ability like you need a military. And if you don't think you need a military, you need to go and pay attention to the rest of the world, because there's militaries all over the world that are doing horrific things. If you don't have a military in this country that can combat that and at least act as a deterrent to them doing things, you're going to get taken over. That's what's happened. I mean, look what's happening in Hong Kong, right? I mean, this is a city that essentially doesn't have a military, and they were a British colony for a long time, and they gave it back over to China, and they were kind of acting like they were independent until recently, and during the pandemic they ramped it up and it's gotten even worse. It's exactly what we talked about. You can't be weak, and in this country being weak is thought of as a virtue. Jordan Peterson has a really interesting way of looking at this, and he said it to me once, and it made a lot of sense. He said people think that you should be weak and you should be docile, and then you should be a pacifist. He goes, no, you should be a monster. He said you should be a monster, you should be ruthlessly ambitious, and then learn how to control it. And it's that old expression, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Okay, so I would just like to apologize to everyone for the heavy breather in the background of that clip, who was very distracting to me. There's so much to unpack in what Joe Rogan said, and I don't disagree, Len, with a lot of the context, or I should say a lot of what he's saying. I think sometimes it's the context in which it's spun. But like, let's start with the very first thing. Hard times create hard men create soft times create soft men create hard times, right? So it's a cycle. We've said this, the world is a cycle, right?
Yep,
I mean, just
absolutely.
pretty much the economy is a cycle. Like there's a lot of things that are just, cyclical. And it's funny because the less we know about that, then the more likely we are to be blindsided every time something happens. But then there's the guy going, we said this was going to happen because it's a cycle.
It's happened
right?
before.
Yeah, it's a cycle. Those
Like
who don't
Bill Bottoms came back in style.
Those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it, right?
Yes.
But anyway, give me an example. I mean, just for a reference point, right? When was the last time you think that we had hard times that made hard men? Like, I don't.
It's for me. It's like I said, I've looked into this a little bit, and I mean, it's literally World War II was the biggest, I mean, you had, in World War II, you had 16-year-old kids that were lying about their age so that they could go to war, and they knew that there was a huge chance that they were going to get killed or injured, and they lined up at the gates to go fight for our country. Lined up at the gates to do it. And since then, the generations have been getting softer. I mean, it's kids barely play outside anymore. It's like, oh, you cut your finger. Let's go to the doctor. Let's check it out. It's kids have become very soft, and it's to the fault of my generation, the generation before me. Every generation, every parent wants to make it easier for their kids to,
I wonder
have a
when
better
that
life.
started, though, right? Because when you go back and you watch, some of these limited series, like, I don't know if you've ever read Ken Follett's, like, Pillars of the Earth, right? Which is an incredible book, historical fiction, but it takes you over a large swath of time. But I don't know, like in medieval times, I don't know if every generation of parent was worrying about making a better life for their kids. They were worried about having children so that they could have somebody to work the farm, right?
Yeah,
they were
absolutely.
worrying about having sons so that sons could get daughters bring in a dowry, or hopefully, expand your territory. Like, it was a little bit more transactional. I'm not saying everywhere, but I'm going to speak from what we've learned probably in history classes, especially about the colonizers, especially about, a lot of the places where the people from this country are. Even, I mean, you can go back to the Industrial Revolution in this country. You had, immigrants coming here with very large families, right? And them kids was in those factories. At
Absolutely.
8, 9, 10. I mean, that's why we have child labor laws now, right? Like,
Absolutely.
because kids were losing arms, because they were getting cut up in looms and, black lung. And
I mean, we should just pay them more.
You should just pay them more. Okay, listen. If you want, there's plenty of countries where you can pay them 25 cents.
And it's there's very few countries that have the ability to be as complacent as the people here do.
See, but so we call it complacency, and I'm not going to disagree with your choice of words, but I also don't know that anybody is fighting back against it, right? And I say that because we've discussed ad nauseum on this show, at least my perspective, that America is built on, blue collar workers, right? Like, American people were people who got their hands dirty. And some of those jobs have gone away, whether it's because of a lack of resources or the fact that it was killing people, like the coal industry in, Pennsylvania. Then we had manufacturing, right? And unfortunately, that ended up getting outsourced because it just got too expensive to make things here in America, right? Because American workers apparently wanted too much money for their time. And
I've looked at that whole thing, and a lot of it is the people who came up with these plans in the 50s and 60s, they were just clearly unsustainable, because you can't have a worker at X amount of dollars and then they retire and you pay them 75% of what you were paying them for the rest of their life.
You're talking about pensions.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
not sustainable. I mean, I have a friend who's a firefighter, 2 friends that are firefighters. One was 10 years in or 5 years in before the other one, and he gets, 60% of his pay for the rest of his life, and the other one is going to get like 20%.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't sustainable. So, that, and the fact that the American companies were allowed to take their jobs overseas and not forced to keep them here and put the money back into our economy. There's a whole mess of things.
I was going to say,
that.
so I feel like there's a lot of moving pieces, and I feel like there's a lot of places where you could start to lay blame. But then we are also a country that loves our luxury. We're also a country that loves our technology. We're also a country that loves to simplify things. Like right now, all the rage is AI, right? Like, you think about all the jobs we have whittled away. Toll workers, right? Like, just 15, 20 years ago, you used to have a roll of quarters in your car, right? If you wanted to drive from Hollywood to Homestead. Because if you jumped on the turnpike, you were definitely going to, hit 2-3 tolls, right? We've eliminated that with the good old Sun Pass. so those were jobs that would keep people. I mean, those were good county, state jobs.
Yeah,
that,
there's new jobs that are coming on.
Like
there's
what?
new. What do you mean, like what? Like the IT people that have to monitor all of that stuff. It's still, the jobs are getting moved. It's like the electric car thing.
But okay, that's cool. But are we giving people the tools necessary to fill those positions? Like the average everyday American that was what they aspired to. The average everyday American that aspired to a good city job, a good public service job, a good state job, to your point, with a pension, with benefits that was going to get them the house, the picket fence, again, one, possibly two cars, a nice vacation, right? Those were high school education max. In fact, you didn't even need a high school education to get some of those jobs, right? And that's not me taking away from, because we're firm proponents of education.
They're still here.
Not IT jobs. No, you're not getting that job.
No,
without a college, without some sort of associate's degree.
Yeah, in IT, no, you're not. But you have to have some kind of skilled labor.
But that's what replaced the manual labor, right? When we're talking about thousands of people in Detroit, I mean, that was generational. That was no different than firefighters and police officers, right? Like how you have people that are
Michigan got devastated. There's no
Michigan,
doubt about it.
Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. I mean, I can rattle off half of the states in this country. I mean, even the Northeast. The Northeast was an epicenter for manufacturing.
But that's big business being allowed to run roughshod over our economy. It's like, our profits are down. Do you think that the companies couldn't have been profitable here if, you have an auto worker?
Yeah, it's called tariffs and taxation, which means you don't allow the Chinese goods to come in at a lower rate or at a lower price.
But you also don't allow the American companies to outsource
but that's my
everything.
point, Len. Yeah. Yes, we still could have been viable and productive and affordable had we done what the EU does, had we done what many other countries do, which is protect their own workers.
Yes.
We do that with certain industries, though. We subsidize the sugar industry. We subsidize the citrus industry.
Who's going off on a tangent today? Because we're talking about the pussification of America.
Well, no, because that is my point, though, Len. We're talking about what we've gotten rid of are those hard times, hard men jobs. Those get out there in the field, grind it out. You get up, you get your lunch pill, you put on your coveralls, and you go to work.
There's a lot of those jobs out there. There's still
nobody. But we talked about this, Lenny. Nobody is pushing those to the forefront. And if you don't come from that kind of community, like look around Miami. How many kids are aspiring? They want to be general contractors. They don't necessarily want to be the dude laying the studs. You understand what I'm saying?
But see, that's the problem. The problem is not that they don't want to be those blue-collar jobs. They don't want to work their way to those jobs.
Also haven't seen them. Like, that is my point, though. It's like where I grew, like, I came from a suburb in Boston, right? A suburb of Boston, so the Cape Cod area. I mean, part of my community is waspy as it gets, right? Like, we're talking blue blood, not blue-collar blood, blue bloods. Astor, Butler, Titanic money, first founders of the whatever, all of that. And then the other side of it is just hardworking immigrants, hardworking, blue-collar people. Again, Titleist. It's, a place called Acushnet Company. It's a lot of welders, seasonal contractors. They used to come down to Florida, in the winter when we would shut down, building sites in the Northeast because it's snowing and you can't build, you can't lay a foundation. They'd come down here and work and go back and forth, and some of them had family businesses and like the guys I went to school, they took over those businesses. Some are restaurant owners now, but pubs, like not Prime 112 and whatever, not restaurateurs. They own little mom and pop spots. I knew I wanted something different than that, right? But for a lot of my friends, that was the end game, right? And that's not that long ago. I'm talking about, I graduated, high school 20 years ago. That's not that long. Like, and these were kids who...
A lot of people doing math right now.
Got married. These are kids who, 22, 23, had kids. Some are still married, some aren't. But it was like they were good with that blue-collar life. So this is what I'm saying is like, when you get removed from it, and I think certain places do that, and I think it goes back to social media, but you can't just blame it on the generation of kids because it starts before it gets to that. And even with you, like I'm joking about labor law, like, I'm not joking about labor laws, but we're talking about the turn of the 20th century, whatever, and them implementing these rules to save children's lives. But like, Len, you don't make your kids work.
A job? No, not necessarily, but Joey and Miranda both do their own laundry. They take out the trash. They do a lot of things around the house.
You're giving them credit for that, though, and 20, 30, 40 years ago, that wouldn't have been something you get credit for. That would have been something that was just expected.
Of course, but they're also both straight A students. So I emphasize their job as being
students.
This.
That's a part of it, though, Len. Like, do you understand that, though? Like, there was a generation, and I don't know how many generations ago it was, where it was like, even my grandmother. Like, it's funny to me. I will never forget, my mom went on her honeymoon, and my grandmother came to our parent-teacher conference, right? And I was young. I was, like, in 3rd grade. I was at a new school, and I'd come from a private school where everything was very much on your own kind of time, and I was an incredible reader. I could read when I was 3. So I was very advanced in terms of like history, social studies, English. My math skills, though, were good, but not in like the public school way. Like, public school, they time everything and everything is very repetitive and very redundant. Like when you do your times tables, it'll be, the 6s and it's 10 different worksheets. And can you do them in under 60 seconds? We didn't do that in my private school. So when I got to public school, I was getting like crushed. Like, what? What do you mean 60 seconds to do these math problems? And so when my grandmother came, my teacher was like, the girl is brilliant in some ways, and she's like, she's slow. What is going, like, there's no way, this doesn't equal out. Like, what's going on? Yeah, my grandmother got home from parent-teacher conference and was like, this is unacceptable. And we're like, and she didn't have to put her hands on, that wasn't who she was. I just didn't want to disappoint her, but like, she was no, you get straight A's. You clean up around the house. Like, there were no exceptions. She just expected excellence across the board. And it was like, that was, there were just, nothing else was going to do. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Like, she just pushed me to be that. My uncle pushed me to be that. Like, my mother always had high expectations for me. So it's funny because I know how you feel about the pussification of America, but then I also know how you raise your kids. And it's not that you're raising pussies, because you're not, but it's like you are also a very modern parent.
Well, I think I remember back when Nick was a baby, which was 27 years ago. That whole helicopter mom thing. Mm-hmm. That was the rage of the 90s. Mm-hmm. The helicopter mom. Oh, don't let him fall off the chair, mm-hmm. And I'm like, he's going to sit down, and I'm like, push the chair out from under him. It's so that whole thing has been amplified, and my kids, they're more sensitive than I was as a child. They're more aware of what bullying is and what it's not and that kind of stuff, mm-hmm. But they're still fairly well adjusted, and, they're tough kids. They're not that uber sensitive, hide in the corner kid, mm-hmm. They're not scared of talking to people.
Yeah.
Face to face.
Yeah.
Eye to eye, which I think is a big part of it. When you can't have a conversation with somebody sitting across from you because you're intimidated mm-hmm. by the whole situation, that causes a problem.
That's a hard thing for me to wrap my brain around, just because, like I said, I was getting shipped off to sleepaway camp when I was like 5. Literally.
Yeah, well, it's
but I say that because, but again, my mother had to work, and she was like, you're not just going to sit around and twiddle your thumbs and be at a babysitter's house. Like, you're going to go, you're going to meet people, and she had gone to summer camp when she was a kid. Mm-hmm. So I was always kind of traveling, and I was very independent. I was also an only child, so, only children are weird like that. We usually can fit in well. Well, Nick was an only child for a minute.
Yeah, I was pretty much an only child.
So, so you're either really great in social situations, but then you can also be very good at being by yourself. There has to come a time where we start to take accountability, though, across the board for the problems that we're looking at today. So while you can have a Joe Rogan talking about, hard times, hard men, soft times, soft men, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, cool. I don't know that.
But do you agree with the fact that masculinity is under attack?
Here's the deal. And I think that you're either going to feel where I'm coming from, or you're going to be like, you're fucking insane. I don't know that masculinity is under attack. I think that he mentioned toxic masculinity, and I do see a difference there because I don't necessarily just identify masculine with men. And I feel like that's where the blurry lines come in. And I say that because I feel like, when we talk about our military is not just dudes anymore, right? Like our military is men and women. And I feel
Let's just use tough.
Yeah, I think that that's a better, so do I think that the bad behavior that is typically associated with men is coming under attack to some degree in 2022? Yeah, do I think that the Me Too movement happened in, 2017, and you started to have people having the conversations about workplace dynamic and power dynamic and, what is appropriate and what isn't, and when is it crossing the line? And I think that those are necessary conversations. And you being a person who has daughters, you should want your daughter to be able to walk in somewhere and feel safe in her workspace. On the other side of that, though, I've also said on this show, as a female who works in predominantly male driven industries, I'm not mad at the fact that I know how to carry myself, even when it can get uncomfortable. And I don't think that every man in particular, and let me tell you something, there are women that can cross lines too. So let's not act like we're always so innocent out here. And I know that there are a lot of women who have no problem using what they have to get what they want and leveraging, their assets in their favor. You know what I mean? So if you were to all of a sudden, if you really want to equal that playing field, really, really make it equal, and the flip of your hair no longer is a distraction, or your shape, or your
but
face.
That's never going to happen.
But that is my point. So it's kind of like let's have the real conversation too, because I think, when it comes to women, a lot of times when we're talking about that particular subject, we forget that a lot of women have, again, as with men, right? You're taught to use those things. Good looking, charismatic,
yeah, you're
smart,
taught to be a man.
Use all of that's not even being.
But women are taught to be a woman. It's like you can't. We are totally different beings. You're talking about taking the hair flipping and the
but you're missing
the
my
tight
point.
dress. But you're talking about taking that away from women, right? To make an even playing field, to take that away from women, and you're talking about men not being men. It's like
not every man is handsome, not every man is charismatic, not every man.
That.
But what
They're
I'm saying
men.
is, when a woman is beautiful, when she's smart, when she's assertive, that's viewed one way. When a man is handsome, attractive, athletic, charismatic, he's a president, right? Like that's his candidacy. When that woman is those things, she can be a bitch, she can be a flirt, she can be a ball buster, she can be a bunch of different things. So what I'm saying is, I think that there's some pages out of men's book that women could stand to snatch, right? We should be encouraging women to embrace all the gifts and all the assets and all the things that were given to us and use them the way that men are. Men are taught to use every little shred of whatever to get them where they want to go, right? No holds barred. You heard the man. Mm-hmm. Be a monster. Be relentless in your pursuit of the things that you want, right? That's what men are taught. And then women, be docile. Don't say too much, all of the bullshit. So to me, when we talk about masculinity, there's some things that I have no problem with women, embracing in that. But if you're going to embrace it as a woman, you can't necessarily knock a man for using it. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I absolutely do.
I want a man who's a man. We joked about it. There was something that was trending on social media, and it was like, ladies, keep it real. Could you be with a dude that got his ass whooped in a fight? Could you stay with a dude if you watched him get his ass beat in a fight? And I was like, did he get jumped? How many people were there? If it was a one-on-one thing,
what level of ass
and he
beating
got
is,
his ass just handed to him, I don't know, because I want to feel safe with my man.
Yeah, but are we talking about bitch slapped, or are we talking about beat down?
This is what I'm saying to you, though. But that was my joke. Is I want a man to be a man. I don't necessarily want a man who's prettier than me. I don't want a man who takes longer to get dressed.
And men want women to be a woman.
Yeah, but again, and I don't want to say what does that mean, but if that means, but that, like, again,
we're going to pick this conversation up again on Saturday.
I love that, but to me that question is very open ended, because to some men it's, women are better, seen and not heard and things like that. Whereas again, the things that we value men for, charisma, charm, like
I've always thought that as children. Children are meant to be seen and not heard.
Yeah, but some people feel that way. There's a lot of people that feel that way about women too.
Yeah, and there's a lot of women that are comfortable feeling that way.
Yeah, and I'm not knocking them for that. Mm-hmm. But also don't knock me for being a little bit more assertive. That doesn't make me any less feminine. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I can still rock the shit out of a 5-inch pair of stilettos. I can throw on a mini dress with the best of them, or a cat suit, and I can, do the hair and all of those. I can do all of that if that's what your definition, but that doesn't necessarily make me a woman, and neither does, cooking in the kitchen.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't like.
But I think it goes. I think the soft man thing goes much farther than just that. I think it goes to the fact that we no longer have, physical education in public schools. It's not required,
But why?
I don't know why it's not required. Just encouraging exercise is not required because, you're not as strong as the other kid, and yeah, I feel bad. Maybe you should talk to somebody. It's okay. All that shit's not okay, because our bodies require things to be healthy, and if you're encouraging or pacifying people who are not healthy over.
But isn't that happening at home? Like, so who are we mad at?
It's happening in society.
Because you don't get to blame public schools when you're constantly telling public schools they don't get to raise your children. So again, it's like everything we do. You know what? Yeah. My biggest frustration is, and it started before we got into this conversation, it's the double talk. It's the cycle. And the reason why things go in a cycle is because we never fix the problem. Right? That's how you end up back at square one. What is it? The definition of doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting a different outcome is the definition of insanity, right? Mm-hmm. We're a bunch of insane mofos just running around doing the same shit over and over again and getting nowhere, having the same conversations over and over again and getting nowhere. Like, and that's what's beginning to frustrate me, because it's like, okay, we can talk. Why is there no P? That doesn't even make sense, right? As a lefty, right? Why is there no PE? We should be healthy.
Yes, here's the frustrating part about that. While we're all arguing about this, smart, intelligent, what you would think would be, upper level people are having these arguments, and they realize they're going in a circle, and yet nothing is getting done.
That's what I just said, Len.
Because I understand, but it's almost like somebody's trying to keep us in that circle. It's almost like somebody's trying to keep us in that constant argument.
That's a cop-out too. That's the other thing. This blaming the man. Like, at the end of the day, if you know the man exists, then stop falling into his trap. So we got to stop.
How?
At this point, what do you mean how? Do something about it. Like, how many times do we have to have the conversation? We've talked about nutrition. We've talked about the vid, right? Like, there's a reason, conspiracy theories aside, that this country, like, did you not know when they started talking about who was at risk? Did you not go, oh, this is going to be fun? Like, when they first started, like, listing off the people that would be at higher risk for COVID, people with, high blood pressure, like underlying symptoms like diabetes, coronary issues. Let's be clear. Heart disease is the number one killer of Americans, followed by cancer, right? Then you have diabetes, then you have, other things. And most of this is diet related, is nutrition, exercise, all of these things that you're talking about. We know this, though. We're not a bunch of dummies, but yet the food and diet business is a billion, if not $1 trillion industry. Every time a new fad, whether it's keto, paleo, Atkins, fat-free, sugar-free, whatever free, right? It's not free. Because you know where it's at? Like, we're paying for it out of our pockets because we go buy the books and we go buy the new foods and whatever and all. You know what I mean? Like, it's wild. But like, how many times do we have to go through? The knowledge is there, like you said. You say it all the time. Like,
And listen,
we don't have
smart people know you have to eat right, yet they don't. You know, they don't necessarily buy into that. You know, if everyone who had, let's just say, a half a brain in this country stopped buying processed foods and maybe cooked a little bit.
Guess what? They can't afford to.
I don't believe that.
No. What do you mean you don't believe that?
I don't believe that, but I'll tell you why.
How much does it cost when you go grocery shopping?
I'll tell you why I don't believe that, Kimmy. Because it costs time. Okay, it costs time because you can buy ingredients to make something that you can buy processed.
Len, I go grocery shopping. Do you know what my bill is for me and my mom?
I'm not saying groceries aren't expensive. What I'm saying to you is,
and I'm not buying processed food.
What I'm saying to you is, you can buy healthy food for the same price that you can buy fucking Frosted Flakes.
Bullshit.
You can.
Bullshit. First of all, you can do cornflakes with a little like agave, and that actually sets it off. And now you've done a little.
You can buy healthy food. I mean,
Lenny, how much do you spend on lunch in a day when you buy your healthy acai bowl?
Oh, $10.
On a lunch.
Yeah, $10, $12.
Yeah, $10, $12, a couple bucks for the tip. You take your tea. Like, that's unrealistic for some people. And mind you, that's one bowl of fruit. That's some shit you can pick off a tree.
I'm not talking about.
That's majority of Americans. It's too expensive for a majority of Americans.
Okay, it's too expensive for the majority of Americans to eat healthy.
It is. That's why. And then you have the convenience factor. You have people working 2 and 3 jobs, trying to get kids to sports and after school activities and places. So what's easier? Running through McDonald's. No shade to McDonald's. Shade. And hitting the dollar menu, right? Like, it is what it is, or the $2, whatever it is now. Supersize it. They can share their fries, whatever the case may be. Unfortunately, between convenience and cost,
do you know any people?
We're killing America.
Do you know any people that you feel are smart and can afford to eat good and don't?
That are smart and can afford to eat good and don't. I mean, on occasion, but it's not a usual thing. But we all have the same conversation.
Yeah, but it's like,
I can't. But most of my friends, honestly, most of my friends are very conscious of what they put in and on their bodies. But again, a lot of my friends are athletes or work in that sphere or work in entertainment, where unfortunately looks and appearance are a lot. I definitely know a few people that love to indulge, but they're very aware, to your point. They're very aware that they're putting some not so great stuff in their body. But, some just overindulge. Some just like to eat, too. They eat really good food. They just eat too much of it. You know what I mean? And then don't walk or exercise enough, too, which is a different conversation. But I'm talking about, that. When we go back to some of the problems when we talk about our military, to me, that's a big one. When we talk about the fitness of Americans to actually staff or source a military, that's a fundamental, that's a nutrition, that's a health, that's an education thing, as Nestor likes to point out. That also used to be taught to some degree in school.
Yeah. They don't teach it anymore.
We used to have, nutrition classes. Also, did you know that did you know that it's mandatory to serve, to any child that's on free or reduced lunch, you have to give them milk? You have to. Or you lose your funding.
That's interesting.
That's the dairy industry and the power of a lobby.
It's all.
Do you understand? But again, that was that whole, if you get into it, and I would absolutely love for us to have, a nutritional expert on the show, but we've talked about this. Milk, especially milk that is not hormone-free, that is loaded up with all the crazy stuff,
antibiotics,
right?
all kinds
of that whole campaign, Milk It Does a Body Good. We're the only species that drinks milk past the gestational period, and the only species that drinks the milk of another animal. The only one. And it's been proven that
I mean, we are a little bit more advanced than most other species.
I get that, but past the gestational period that's the real
Yes.
kicker right there. Is
Yes.
like, okay, and
I mean, some people drink milk because they like it.
I get that.
I mean, I have milk and cereal.
I get that, but I mean, you could do almond milk. Do you have hormone-free milk? Do you like make sure you buy like organic milk?
No, I'm just about as everybody else.
Okay, so you're talking about yourself. That's why Lenny felt a little guilt. That's like, do you
I'm
know
just
any
as bad.
smart people? Should I have just said, yeah, you, Len? But you don't. But again, you normally you go to the juice stand by your crib that has the
Yes, I get fresh orange juice every morning.
That you could actually press yourself.
I try to eat as healthy as possible. Occasionally, I'll have a bowl of Frosted Flakes, which I think is on the top 10 list of worst foods on the planet.
On the planet?
On the planet.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
But besides that, how about exercise? Exercise is free.
But again, I take that back to parents. You said it yourself. Kids barely play outside anymore. That is on parents.
Okay. So do we have any smart parents out there that know that their kids would be better off if they took a bike ride around the block every day? Yeah, we have all these smart parents. This all goes back around to that circle of why we're in this loop and we're not doing anything. Because we don't even do the things we upsetting because we're in fear of upsetting our child.
That's on you then. That is a shame on you.
But this is the society, and this is what we're talking about, and this is what he's talking about. Okay?
What do you mean, though, that's this society? First of all, what I don't understand is this, though. We apparently have this nation full of, middle finger in the air, don't tread on me, zero fucks given people, right?
Yeah.
But you're too scared to tell your kid to get on a bike and go ride around the block? Like,
I mean,
you guys need to stop being pussy.
I don't think it's all of the
Don't
country,
blame it on
but
the kids anymore.
I think it's certain areas. I mean, I know a lot of parents that are
How about you get on the bike with your
are
kid?
scared to push their kids. They're scared to make their kids do things. I don't know if they're going to want to do that. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know if they're going to want to do that? Why don't you just tell them they're going to do that?
I don't understand, though, where the how did this happen? Because this feels like it happened pretty quickly, like this disintegration of craziness.
20-something years?
This is what
years?
I'm saying to you. I'm saying this because when I grew up, horseback riding, jiu-jitsu, figure skating, gymnastics, dance,
what did your
summer
grandmother
camp.
say to you if you said, I don't feel like going today?
Well, you're going.
Exactly. The problem is the sensitivity. So now everybody's worried about hurting their kids' feelings.
But how? So here's the deal.
This started with everybody gets a trophy.
But I love my grandmother, and I think she's incredible. And I love my mother, and I think she's incredible. And I love my uncle, and my uncle can make me cry like no other, right? Like, I don't understand. So if I had kids, because I don't have kids, and you guys should know this by now, 41 episodes in.
And years.
I don't, and years. I don't, where does the disconnect come, right? Because I appreciated being pushed, right? I appreciated all of those opportunities that I was given. So if I had kids, I would want to give them the same opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. But you didn't understand that until you were older. Mm-hmm. You didn't understand that your grandmother and your mom making you do all those things was making you a better person until you were older. And you're like, and I used to say this to Nick, I'm like, one day a fucking light bulb's going to go off in your head and you're going to go, aha, that's what Dad was talking about when I was 4.
I get it, but my point is, Len, where's the disconnect, though?
Let me finish. So now we are empowering children to make decisions and have these feelings and have all of this stuff so that parents are almost walking on eggshells with their children. I know a lot of parents that walk on fucking eggshells with their children.
But why?
And you know what'll fix it?
No, you're not.
One fucking smack of the phone out of your hand and that's over.
Pay attention to what I'm asking you, though. Because they were probably raised by parents like you were raised by parents. So what happened? Why are they all of a sudden parenting their children so differently?
This was the whole helicopter mom movement in the 90s.
Yeah, but the 90s, those kids are in their mid-20s and late 20s now.
Yeah.
I mean,
and they're raising kids.
They're raising
helicopter
5-year-olds if you're lucky. Nah.
Yeah, but still.
I'm talking about the teenagers that were still like I'm talking about your kids who are raised by people like you. Like I'm talking about your friends who are raising kids that they're afraid of. Like what happened?
They're afraid to tell them that. I mean, listen, I have to tell Rachel sometimes. I'm like, listen, the kids need to be ready at 7:00. I'm picking them up to go. Well, what if they don't want to go? I'm like, it's not an option. What do you mean? What if they don't want to go? I don't care if they don't want to go. They're going. It's you. The that whole.
What happened?
It's,
what happened?
Don't fucking.
Because that happened to adults. Do you understand what I'm saying? It happened to adults. It didn't happen. The kids are now just a product of how they've been raised. So we're mad at a generation that really had no skin in the game on this one. Like we literally have to be looking back at ourselves, and that's the bigger problem. Is we always want to point the finger at somebody else, but it's like Joe Rogan. Like, okay, where are your kids? How are you raising your kids? How are your friends raising their kids? Because those are the kids you're talking about.
Yeah, somewhat. But I mean, millennials, for instance, I think the millennial problem, it's
I'm a high-end millennial though.
Because. That's a reach.
No, I am.
They end around
80. No, 80. It's millennials start in 80 and end in like 94. So I'm a millennial. By definition of the generation.
No,
I don't know why
I think millennials were born in the late 90s.
No, that's Gen fucking Z.
No.
Yes, Len.
No.
Look
it up.
Lenny. Oh my God. Len,
look it up.
Me.
How is the two Nicks are millennials? Both born in the 90s. Mid-90s.
Millennials. What is considered a millennial? Born 1981 to 1996, homeboy.
Okay, 96. Okay. So you're early. They're late.
Yeah. They're late and
they're
pushing Gen Z.
So those are the ones I deal with most, are the 20-somethings.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really consider you a millennial because you don't act like a millennial for the most part. But
Sweet
this is that later millennial generation has I don't give a fuck. I'm only going to do as much as I need to do to get by. And, we were looking at it the other day. I was looking at Nick, who's 27, and Miranda and Joey, who are 16 and 14, and going, what's the difference in them? They're they're clearly have a different, I mean, Miranda wants a job. I won't let her get a job.
Okay.
Okay. And she's started her own companies a couple times.
Notice the girl, the woman.
Joey
wants the job.
Whatever. She wants the,
the independence. She wants the autonomy. She wants,
but Nicholas's childhood was split right in half by the advent of the iPhone. Split, and the other Nick also split right in the middle. So these are kids that used to play outside every day till they were 11, 12 years old. And then they got video games and social media and they just fall into that like loop right there. Now, the ones who have had this their whole life that were born with this, like my younger ones, they use it more like a tool than entertainment.
Okay, but to go back to what you said, right? Like when Nick was growing up, and I just want to go back to the hard times, hard men. Like I want to go back to the blue collar thing, like getting in there, working. Like I literally worked for my family from the time I was. First of all, I used to dust bottles in my grandfather's like package store. For like a penny a bottle. And I loved it. I loved having money. I loved counting money. Like you couldn't, oh my God, on weekends I'd get up and count my change. I used to love it, like rolling quarters and shit and taking it to the bank. Like I like money. And then I would work the register when I wasn't supposed to. And as soon as I could get a worker's permit, I had a permit. I worked at a farm stand. Like I loved working. And it didn't matter what, driving tractors, whatever. But when Nick was growing up, right? Because I know you've done construction. I know you've had a bunch of different, like you're an entrepreneur. So you've done a bunch of different things.
I've always been working.
But you've been working. Did you have him on work site, or were you already into more the real estate part of it, flipping? And
he's always seen me work.
No, seeing you work, it's different. Him coming out and being on site with you.
Yes.
You've tried.
I've tried to get him. I used to take him to the body shop with me when I owned it. But it's like, and he did work. He did, swept, held he did all that stuff. And just said, you know, I don't want to. He has an attitude, along with the other Nick and a few other millennials I know, that their value is more than like the job is too menial. You know, I'll do the job, but you have to pay me X amount of dollars to do the job. It's menial, okay? They've never had to feed their family. They've never had to do whatever it takes to put food on the table.
Because you gave them a better life.
Because I gave them a better life. You're right. They've never had that. So, again, that's where this whole hard men, soft men, whole thing comes from. You know, and this is not anything new. You know, I know a kid, his grandfather owned Claire's stores, right? So, you know, his grandfather had X amount of kids and spoiled them and did whatever, and the kids never became anything. So the grandkids don't get the inheritance till he's like 20 years in the ground because of the parents, not, you know. So, you know, there's one thing to give kids, but you look here at Grant. You know, his daughter is by no means.
She's a beast.
Yeah, his daughter is by no means going to, even though she flies in private planes and doesn't, she's by no means not going to.
Yeah, she wants to supersede. Whatever he's done, she wants to top it.
Yes.
And he's giving her the tools,
kids, you know,
and the resources to do it, and the drive.
Parents give their kids a better life because they want them to then make a better life for their kids. So it's like, you know, yeah, I don't want my kids to have to struggle and worry about where their dinner is coming from, but I want them to do better in the next generation. And that didn't happen.
But notice, though, and this is, again, not a knock on your parenting, and there's two people involved in that, but that's a family affair, right? That whole 10X thing, like, she came to his taping of the podcast.
Yes.
Right? We pulled her into that. But she was, like, on a work day with dad. Like, her whole, like, they're not in school anymore. They're homeschooled because he felt like they weren't getting the education that he could give them, you know, outside of school. So not only are they learning their X's and O's, their history and whatever, but they're getting real life business experience. I mean, this girl can probably put together a proposal faster than you can. You know what I'm saying? And you're pretty quick, but it just she's a beast. But that's a different level of exposure. And I feel like everything about him is like, put your money where your mouth is, right? Like that's who he is, and his, you know, Elaine is a part of that. They're all a part of it.
Yeah, but there's a whole generation of entitled kids that don't feel like they have to earn it. And the new generation, my younger ones, are, you know,
a little more hungry.
They're a little bit more hardworking. They're, you know, they're not afraid of that. I mean, I still think they feel like they're semi-entitled, but that's just because I spoil them. But I think there's a whole generation of you owe us kids.
But I think it also goes back to like like you having your son, if you're a general contractor, and bringing, or your son or your daughter, whoever it is, right? Because we had Stella here, remember, and she's been in the construction world, and her dad was like, yo, you're either going to sit on the porch or you're going to run with the big dogs. Which one do you want to do? Right? So I think that it's really, it goes back to the parent thing, but it's not only what you see, but it's what you're encouraged to do. And it's like when you hear the stories about like the long-term, the wealthy families that really are able to sustain that generational wealth, they're the families that didn't give anybody anything. Like if you had a Fortune 500 and you wanted to be a part of the family business, you didn't walk into a corner office. You started in the fucking mailroom. Yeah. Right? You were a delivery boy. Like even my old media company that I work for, there's only one member of the family that's still in it. And he's now, I want to say, like the president. But he did exactly that. He spent his summers interning from when he was like 10 underneath his grandfather and his uncle, and he worked his way up.
The other part of that is, if you're going to work in a family business, you have to be better than every other employee there. You have to be.
Well, no, but that's the problem, is not in all cases, and that's when it fails. When
but if you don't make the effort to be, you know, the guy who's there early, the guy who leaves late. If you don't make that effort,
you don't get the respect because then
absolutely.
It's
nepotism.
They're only here because of this. But when we talk about that again, the hard times, hard, but I don't know. Like I just again, it's like I just want the double talking and the finger pointing to stop, because even when I think about your younger kids, right, and we talked about what builds that grit, it's like we've gotten so far away from it, and we've gone back. We've had conversations about the blue collar stuff. We've had conversations about the real manual laborers which we're always going to need. This country's infrastructure is falling apart. We need people to lay concrete. We need people that can weld. We need underwater welders. We need construction people. I mean, we need the people that can fix the fabric of our country. Not to mention, you have all this new construction going up. That's plumbers that are going to be needed and electricians for the long haul, right? As we just continue populating this great earth of ours, like the things that make society go aren't going to go by the wayside, you know. And I don't know that I'm hiring a freaking robot to come.
No, but I think there's still a lot of people that go blue collar lifestyle.
How many do you know? How many of your friends' kids are in a trade school right now learning how to be welders?
How many of my friends' kids? You'd be surprised. I have one friend. One kid is learning to be a boat mechanic.
Love it.
The other one works at the port in a shipyard.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, yeah, I have plenty of friends who have, you know, I mean, blue collar parents raise blue collar kids. Confused parents like me raise basket cases.
No,
but it's true. I mean, it's generational. You can't. Some of the blue collar jobs have gone away, which is what devastated Michigan. You know, my dad worked for GM.
But if
his
that's
dad
all
worked for
your
GM.
people know, and that's all a community knows, now you have a reset period. And that's the other place where we're hitting a wall in this country, is that there's some people who don't want to move forward, right? There's some people who have stalled out because change can be scary, right? Like, and that's the other frightening part about it. It's like there's an evolution that has to come. We've talked about technology. We've talked about going greener. We've talked about, you know, electric, and it's not going to happen overnight, but that's going to be a whole new workforce that's needed, right? To supplant and keep those systems running. But let's start training those people now. Let's start prioritizing those fields in our public school systems now in order to make sure that we have the workforce necessary. You'd be amazed at how I think
Google has a whole free course you can take.
But I feel like, Len, men feel more valuable when they can contribute, right? Like I think that's something that we've proven over the course of history. Men are valued for their ability to provide, right? And then on top of that, it's something, it's just, I think it's intrinsic in them. But I think you also have a generation or generations now that feel like their usefulness is waning, right? Or they've watched the older men in their lives go through that, have the rug pulled out from underneath them, lost their way, not been able to support a family, not been able to provide properly, right? Like that whole American dream, that middle class, which I think is where you came from, and then you were able to take a step up.
I'm still there.
No, but again, I told you there's a disparity between $45,000 and literally $200,000 a year. That's the middle class in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach, according to a recent study. 45, like how is that even the same ball game? But whatever. So my point is, you're on the higher end of that, obviously, you know. And so with that being said, your level of provision for your family changed a little bit. And I think that when you talk about that quote unquote confusion, maybe that's where that comes from. But for a lot of people, that isn't the problem, right? It's the exact opposite of that. I've watched these men who were providers, you know, historically in my family, lose their ability to do that. And in losing their ability to provide for their family, they then feel less than, right? And when men feel less than, usually that's when destructive behaviors start, right? So when we start talking about soft time, like, you know, I think that I think soft can be misconstrued as things being easy, or it's that cycle, right? Like, I don't know. And I think that that's the bigger issue, is that we've gotten into this.
I mean, what would today's youth fight for? You know, that's really the what would they fight for? What would make them throw down and go to war? Who knows? I don't
think that anybody in this country wants to be steamrolled. Like, I know you. I feel like you have this picture of this big invasion, and I think that they would fight for it. I mean, Len, we saw it after 9/11.
Yeah.
Like 9/11 happened, and throngs of young men and women went and joined the army.
Yep.
To defend freedom, to defend Americans, to fight back, to get whatever you want to, however you want to look at it. Now, unfortunately, they got sucked into yet another very extensive and what ended up feeling, I think, redundant to a lot of people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like war that just got dragged out where there wasn't transparency. And why are we here? And when you're military, when you're men and women who are laying their lives on the line and their families are like, why are we there? That's a problem.
Yes.
And we haven't had full support of a military action since, your point, World War II.
Yeah.
So, I think that Americans of any generation would fight to protect America. I don't think anybody, like I said, wants to be steamrolled. I don't think they want the Chinese just rolling up on us or the Russians or anybody else, but we're not in that fight right now. And so unfortunately, right now, we're fighting each other. So you're not seeing, you know what I mean? Like, we're not seeing what that American camaraderie looks like because we're fighting each other, but we're fighting each other over shit like we've said we know the answer to, like, that we have it written down, but we can't keep blaming it on the man.
It's not blaming it on the man. It's blaming it on the constant bombardment and change of what's right, what's wrong, what's not, what is. It's it's confusion. There's a lot of confusion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially in the past 3 years, there's been a lot of information that has changed rapidly.
Crazy to me though, like Joe using his massive platform to what is he changing with this conversation, right? Because when we talk about masculinity coming under attack, the conversations, I've seen a lot of stuff about trauma, like as you're talking about it, I've seen a lot of posts lately about forgive your parents for not knowing how to, it just some wild stuff. And I try to take it all in. Like, that's one thing this podcast has taught me because, I've been dragged a couple times in the comments for things that I've said that are very, generational. And so I try to take everything with a grain of salt and with an open mind because that's why we set this thing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that every parent parented from a place of trauma or that every decision they made was because they were emotionally, limited or stagnated.
Emotional damage.
Well,
listen, you are correct 100%, except everything that happens to you now is trauma.
Yeah.
So, my mom made me go to bed without eating. That was a traumatic experience for me, and now I'm damaged for life. That is what people are now hinging their emotional damage on from their parents.
But you know what it goes back to? Excuses. It goes back to being able to place blame.
But someone is validating that. Someone
Again,
is
can I tell you, it's a new industry.
Yes,
I'm
someone
sure
is validating the fact that you had to go to bed without dinner when you were 6.
And here's the deal, though, Len. Like, I'm here for mental health. I'm here for making sure that you're taking breaks when you need to. I'm here for boundaries. I'm here for acknowledging there is some severe trauma in this life that people experience.
Absolutely.
I would never want to negate or take away
Absolutely.
from that. But do I think that everything, because of capitalism, becomes something to monetize on? And we're seeing it. How many new mental health apps are there?
Don't get me wrong. That could have traumatized that 6-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it could have.
Well, especially if it happened repeatedly.
It could. Well, it could have traumatized that 6-year-old. I mean, I used to push Nick's face in the cake until one year my niece pushed his face into the cake and it was an ice cream cake and it didn't smush.
Did he break his? He didn't break his nose.
No, he didn't break his nose.
Those things are very frozen.
That was a normal thing. It was like it was.
You'd get dragged for that now.
Yeah, whatever. Fuck all of you.
Wow.
Want to drag me for that.
The views of Lenny
The
are not
point-
necessarily the views of the ManTFup
point-
podcast team.
The point is,
Yeah.
yes, it could have had an effect on that child of 6 years old if they had to go to bed without dinner, and then validated in the future by that's why my whole life is the way it is. It's. I believe in getting help, but that type of stuff, those little things that when I was growing up weren't shit, that weren't, they didn't make me feel bad. It was punishment. It made me think, well, maybe tomorrow I'll eat my broccoli and I won't have to go to bed without dinner. If you take away all of those tools to raise a child, to teach a child. I mean, Nick, one day I had this truck and it had 2 little glass lights on the top, right? And he'll remember this story to this day. 2 little glass lights, and he used to turn them on and off when he was in my truck. And he would leave them on, and then in the morning, the fucking battery would be dead. So we got in the truck one day, and I see it's on. I'm like, Nick, touch that. Like sticking his tongue to a pole. It burned his little finger right on the end. And you know what? He will never, ever forget it. And he will never, ever not pay attention to leaving the lights on in a car so the battery goes dead. And I'm sorry, but that's a life lesson. That didn't damage my child. It did not damage. It did not. He used to sit on his knees in the seat with the seatbelt on. I'm like, Nick, you can't sit on your knees with the seatbelt on.
Did you hit the brakes?
I stuffed him right under the dashboard. He'll remember that one to this day, too. Right under the dashboard.
Lenny,
I'm like, do you see?
Trauma. Oh, my God.
Do you see? This is, but it's fact. It's fact. Kids don't learn these things otherwise.
No.
You can tell him till he's blue in the face that you can't sit on your knees with the seatbelt on.
You don't put your kid into the freaking glove box.
No, he went under the glove box. He went straight to the floor. But these are the things that teach kids right and wrong.
So glad Len is not having any more kids.
He does them right and wrong.
Oh my God.
You know, Joey's been bleeding since he was a little one. He was the biggest daredevil. I told you, the preschool that he went to would call us every day. Oh, Joey fell off the tricycle. Oh, Joey hit this. And we're like, look, unless you're transporting him to the hospital, do not call us anymore. Now, meanwhile, we've already had our 2 kids and 2 nieces go through this program. So they know us very well. It's not like, it's not like we're strangers in some weird place. The teachers, it's the same teacher that had Nick as Joey. So we're like, don't call us unless you're transporting him. And, that's the way Joey grew up. Dad, look, I cut myself, I'm bleeding. I'm like, cool. Wipe it off. Now he gets bloody noses like crazy. And I'm like, cool, I have pictures of him on my phone with bloody noses. It's just normal. It's like, you're a kid. Okay, you're bleeding, you're a kid. That's what kids do. They fall down, go boom. Then they get up and they go, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that again. That's how kids learn. Yeah. If you take all of that away from a kid, they're not going to know how to act when they walk out the door for the first time by themselves.
Yeah, I mean, my mom never had to stuff me under the glove box to teach me.
Whatever. But you learned in different ways. Yeah. I'm sure there was things that you thought were traumatic at the time. Yeah. That you then go, oh.
I'm just so you're a madman, Len. Sometimes I can't. I love it though. Yeah. I will say this though, as we get ready to wrap up this conversation that has once again gone all over the place. Talking about masculinity being under attack, like the one thing I'm completely here for, and I don't know if this is part of the attack or not, like I'm good with dudes being encouraged to talk to somebody. Like I'm good with dudes being encouraged to
That's not
express
masculinity being
their,
under attack.
no. That is though. Like that's falling under the guise of that. There's a lot of people like that's a part of what we're talking about is men being able to talk about how they feel if they're under pressure. Like we lost, the guy Twitch, Ellen ZJ took his own life out of like nowhere. This is a guy who brought nothing but happiness and sunshine. And it's like, if you're not encouraging men who oftentimes carry the weight of the world on their shoulder and are told from the time they're 4, man up, man the fuck up. Like, men don't cry, all of these things, that it's not healthy. So I'm happy that we're in
Men need
that
some kind of
space.
release.
I'm happy that we're in a place where we're finally encouraging our strong masculine men to release that shit. Like, you can't walk through life holding on to that, all of that, right? Whether it's anger, aggression. Why do you think you have dudes losing their shit, right? Like, I mean, it is what it is. So I'm here for that. I'm here for men being held accountable for their actions. I'm here for us, holding their feet to the flame when it comes to no meaning no. And I'm here for the dudes that are stepping up and like, telling their boys, stop being a fucking creep. You know what I mean? Like, she's clearly uncomfortable. The girl over there has been eyeing you all night long. Go talk to her. Leave the girl who clearly doesn't want to talk to you alone because you're freaking her out. Like, I'm good with dudes, like, telling their boys, you're a douchebag. Like, I like that we're in that space and we're encouraging, the bros to make each other better, right? Now, I don't know where does that slide though into emasculating? Like, where's the emasculation happening that Joe Rogan is clearly talking about that then is impacting our military? Like, that's where I'm kind of lost.
Well, there's a physical part to it.
But again, that's across the board though. That's not just that's men,
Yes.
that's women, that's Americans in
Yes.
general. We're the
Yes.
most obese, unhealthy
Yes.
nation on the planet, and we're supposed to be.
Yes, but let's just go with
the
the
wealthiest.
majority of the people who are enlisting are male.
Okay.
Okay, the majority. So that's kind of maybe where he's going with that,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm sure it's not 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really the men hating type of thing. It's like, oh, look at that guy beating his chest over there. He's a Neanderthal. It's that's a man.
Is it though?
Men do that.
But like, do you like?
Men do that.
Yeah, but Len,
Would you? You've already.
No. Yeah, but there's a difference between arrogance and the peacock strut and just the really boisterous, loud, obnoxious. Like, because
Yeah,
to
but
me,
see,
that's
that's what
insecurity.
but-
to me, that's insecurity. Like, to me, confidence is quiet and security is loud. So I like the guy who walks into a room and just has a commanding presence. He doesn't have to be the loudest one. He doesn't have to be the drunkest one. He doesn't have to be the most obnoxious one.
Yeah.
Look at me, look at me, look at me. But I feel that way about women too, right? I like the woman who just walks in and just the attention is on her, and it's not necessarily because of how she's dressed. It's just something that she exudes.
So
like
here's something I heard, which I thought was probably very true. Women only have approximately 20% of the men to choose from. So you have all the women, and you only have 20% of the men that are willing to step up and take that shot and have the courage to approach these women. So that arrogance, that whole thing is part of what's under attack. It's part of that. It's that whole male dominance thing. It's that whole, men are the boss, and it's that whole thing that's under attack. It's
That's what can I tell you something though? Again, that's an insecurity thing that you guys have because most women don't find that shit attractive. And that's what's funny about it. We're just telling you, like, bruh, that's not cute. That's not it. That's not the look. Like, and so now we're just telling you, whereas before you'd be like, and you'd keep it moving. It's like the argument we had in here when we were talking about construction sites, and I've hollered at a lot of ladies and they love it. And it's like, or they pretended to like it because they didn't want to be harassed anymore. And that's what a lot of women go through. It's not always that. I don't want you to be meek and mild and whatever. Like, I like the dude that'll send me a drink, but that doesn't mean coming up and hey baby, and like, and that overly aggressive, again, that quote unquote toxic masculinity, like the guy who backs you into a corner as a woman, like that's not it, bro. Like, and that has happened to me in the workplace, you know, that the super close talker that's like eyeing you up and down, like get the fuck out of my face, bro. Like, and I can handle myself in that situation, but like that's not it. And now we're telling you that's not it. The problem is he got to walk through his life thinking that was it. Because women didn't want to push back, because we didn't want to make them uncomfortable, because you didn't want to make the energy weird, right? So you giggle about something, or you know how many times I've avoided a fight in a club or in a bar by like like laughing, you know, politely, because otherwise, well, fuck you then, bitch. Like dudes will flip on you so quick, it's not even funny. You know, like, oh, I'm here with my dude. That's okay. He doesn't have, like, it's mad disrespect. It's wild. And now we're telling you like, nah, I'm just not interested. Like, I'm good. Like, all of this, I'm good. Cool, I'm a fucking bitch. Like, now women have just, you know, we're flipping it around. So when you feel like being a man, like, it's never been cute. It's never been cute, and now we're just saying it. It doesn't mean that I don't want you to be masculine. Masculine doesn't have to mean being a dick. It doesn't have to mean being douchey. It doesn't have to mean being obnoxious.
No, it doesn't have to mean that. But it eventually is going to have a meaning, because it clearly has a different meaning for everyone.
Yeah, but again, I think that goes back to the change thing that we talked about, and change being scary. And again, people not wanting to have to be accountable or uncomfortable in learning possibly new ways to interact. And Len, I'm sure there are some people out there that are still going to giggle and laugh and be cool with it, right? Like that is what it is. But moving forward, like, your daughter is going to be around, I hope, a different caliber of masculine man, if that's what she chooses to deal with. Like, I hope she's with that understated guy, like the cool guy that's got it covered and that she feels safe with and that she knows has always got her back, but isn't the guy out there bumping into somebody because he's standing to, you know what I mean? Like, intentionally trying to start the fight that's eventually going to get his ass knocked out and him broken up with because he's an idiot.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Because that happens often too, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's machismo.
yeah, but that's the idiot, the Neanderthal banging on his chest, and then pop goes the weasel.
Mm-hmm.
And now, joke's on you, bro.
All right.
Like,
that's a good spot.
all right, joke's on you, bro.
That's a good spot to wrap up.
Thanks, Joe Rogan. We appreciate you helping with the conversation today. Like, subscribe, follow, share. Episode 41 officially in the books. Again, we love when you comment. Lots of times that's inspiration for future episodes. And I hear Lenny's got some very interesting guests lined up for the start of 2023. So I'm excited.
Yeah. I'm excited too.
Follow us everywhere. All right. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and the podcast is absolutely any and anywhere you can stream a podcast. We're out.
Peace.